and welcome to another episode of the Backdoor Cut, our second episode, online episode or virtual episode that we're recording here in our respective countries and counties. Dara, Eoghan, how are you doing? How was round one? And how are we feeling getting into this new week, which we are Wednesday now, but you probably have a little bit of training done. We'll start with Dara because Dara's been pretty vocal about how he's been feeling online.
Yeah, no, good to be back. And I suppose I think we had spoke a wee bit about it just in ourselves about how good it is, I suppose, to have the leagues back. But again, as a player who isn't involved, as me and Eoghan aren't, it can be frustrating watching it. But no, it's good to have it back. And yeah, in terms of my own training, I suppose kind of ramp things up a wee bit now over the last week or two in terms of conditioning, and body is feeling better than it was probably this time last week or the week before. So I'm a wee bit more positive, I suppose, on my outlook at the minute, and I'm pushing towards getting back into the pitch, whether that's in the league or not. I'm not too sure, to be honest, but I'd love it to be, I suppose.
It's always hard when that first game comes around and you're in the dressing room and you're involved, but you're not directly involved because you can't play. Eoghan, did you feel something similar last weekend? Or are you kind of still going with the Eoghan McCabe, very positive, abundant mindset all of the time, or does it ever get to you?
No, I'd say this week was probably the one time it did get to me. I was in a bad way over the weekend, bad form. We were in Limerick and injured players didn't actually travel in, so it wasn't on TV, couldn't watch the game, just depressing. And then you go on Instagram, you see the team running out, and you're just going, it was horrible. But buzzing for the lads, class performance, class win on the road as well. Good start, hit the ground running, and as cliche as it sounds, you're just happy. Yes, you're happy for the team, but you are selfishly disappointed. You want to be a part of it, and you train so much to play, and when you're not playing, it's a horrible feeling. But definitely over the weekend, bad form, stinking form, but over the last couple of days making progress again, on the way back up, and we're back feeling good again until the weekend, I'm sure.
So we'll touch on results in a second, but first off, it'll probably offer a lot of value to the listeners who may be going through similar things, how to figure out or find out how you guys bring yourselves back to level and back to a positive mindset when you're dealing with the setbacks of injury and of rehab and the frustrations of not being able to do the thing that you love, which is football. I will start with Dara on that one.
Yeah, so I think it's important. Something I figured out is anyway, you're gonna be frustrated, you're gonna be annoyed, and it's okay to let that, I suppose, to feel that, but to not let it get on top of you and start affecting sessions and affecting pain in the body and affecting everything else. So there will be times in my week where I am just annoyed and frustrated, but over time I've probably minimised that, and I just try and be as logical as I possibly can with it and think, right, what can I actually do to help the situation and get myself back? So all I can do is, I suppose, is train as well as I possibly can, given, I suppose, the level of pain or the level of readiness I have in that day. If there is days where, pain is higher or I can't train with the intensity, what else can I suppose do within that day? And whether it's with nutrition, whether it's with keeping stress levels down, whether it's just enjoying other things to continue to push me, I suppose, in the right direction to getting back playing. But I think where players go wrong is they probably get worked up in how shit it actually is at times, and let that fester instead of just dealing with what you can actually deal with. And at the start, maybe this time last year, I found that a lot more difficult because it was new to me. But over time, I've got a lot better at, I suppose, dealing with that and looking at things logically, and just doing what I can each day, I suppose. That's my way of doing it, I suppose, at the minute.
Eoghan, do you ever struggle with that, in that both of you are quite positive and quite action oriented? Do you ever struggle to just relax and decrease the stress levels, as Dara has said? Because obviously it's really frustrating, as Dara has outlined there, being on the sideline, not being able to play, but it's not just the nutrition. It's not just being really anal about your training. It's the recovery as well and decreasing the stress levels. Do you have any input on that, or any specific kind of techniques that you've used to try to optimize your recovery of late?
I think the main thing for me has just been trying to gain perspective. Like, I was just reading Dan Carter's book there. Started about 4 months ago, but only finished it last night. But just reading through like the amount of injuries he went through in his career and the type of injuries that they were all massive injuries, and you're kind of going, right, like bit of perspective. Like, I'll be back here in a couple of weeks, sort of thing. Like, it's not a long term thing, and then even going to training. And you're seeing the ACL boys coming back and doing their rehab, and you're going, right, like it could be a lot worse. So that perspective is definitely a big thing. I think even for me, just brain dumping and like chatting to people around me. Paula, she got the brunt of it there at the weekend, like, but she was very good, and just like she'll call it how it is as well. Like, not one for you'll be grand or whatever. It's just like, oh, and shut the fuck up and get on with it. It's like, right, fair enough. But yeah, just brain dumping, like talking out loud, and then almost like feeling that you come to the conclusion yourself. It's like, right, the only thing I can do is focus on what's in my control. You can worry about, right, I want to be back, I'm missing this game, I'm missing that game, but the only thing you can control is your actual input. So obviously nailing your rehab, as Dara says, nailing your food, managing stress, all that sort of things. But I think for me, the biggest thing is gaining perspective. It's not so much that, it's more so whenever those times do get tough and you get a bit frustrated, that it's like, right, you need something to sort of reset then. Other than that, I think I would kind of handle it okay and I get through it all right. But yeah, it is those moments where you're kind of, it is all sort of doom and gloom, and you're going, right, you need something to come out of that. And it's like having a wee trigger, I think you get better with it at time as well. It's very easy to go down that sort of spiral, but then I think the more you do it, the more you realize, right, how can the quicker you can get out of it, the better, and focus on what's actually going to help you rather than just, worried about something or stressed about something is just going to make the whole scenario even worse. So I think the more you do it, the more you recognize it, and the quicker you can get out of it each time.
From what you've both said there, it's very self-focused. Like, you have to be very self-focused in rehab and return to play and trying to get back in the field to get yourself back there. And sometimes maybe you have to be even selfish. But because you're so self-focused, and the number one thing that you can do to improve is focus on your own performance, does it ever lead to you feeling quite isolated within the group? And are you a little bit reluctant to offer your opinion in maybe those analysis sessions with the group, given that you're not directly on the field? Or is it something that you're conscious of and you try to voice your opinion as much as you would if you were still playing? Because that does push the group forward. Dara?
Yeah, I suppose, to be honest, I've kind of removed myself largely from it all. It has been a lot of, I suppose, lonely sessions. Just a lot of my work is just done up at the pitch on my own, maybe during the day or in the gym. So it hasn't been the worst. Like, I've kind of I enjoy training on my own as well, but I do feel then when I am in team meetings, when I am like, I'm not training, I'm not doing the intensity of work that they're doing, I'm not within the game. So I personally don't feel comfortable giving my opinion on certain things. If something popped up and I really thought I could offer value, then I probably would. But so far, I just feel like I've been well out of the loop, to be honest. And I hope to probably reintegrate back into that now as I ramp up training and probably return to, I suppose, doing maybe condition runs with the team. But yeah, like, in terms of like one-to-one with friends who are on the team, I'd still have many discussions in terms of what I think in terms of what could be done better or what could be done, I suppose, to help the team or help them. But as a collective, yeah, I feel like you need to be within a group, I suppose, to offer that input.
Yeah, literally exact same. Haven't been really on the pitch, planning just to get back onto the pitch a wee bit here on Friday, and even just if I'm around and you can see things and you can watch things, but when you haven't been on the pitch when they're training and you're not 100% involved in what's going on, I think it's hard to kind of throw in an opinion there, because it's the lads that are training week in, week out, and session after session, they know exactly what's going on, whereas you might catch one glimpse of it and you don't see the whole picture, sort of thing. So, and then even with the game, not being at the game, like, it's hard for me to kind of go and add my sort of thoughts on it. It's very easy for me to say, just sitting and watching or catching up or whatever. So yeah, I think you do. For me, you definitely have to be a part of it. You have to be involved in it. They offer those opinions, but similar enough to there, if you do see something and you're there and you feel like it's going to better the team or it's going to add to the team, definitely. But I think for myself, it's almost, as you say, being selfish, focus on yourself first and foremost, get yourself back, and then once you're in the mix again, then you start sort of bringing that in. Part of me is thinking that's kind of the wrong approach, but and you should be offering a bit more, but at the same time, your primary focus is right, just get myself sorted, and then that'll probably hopefully impact the team a bit more than just talking like.
And it might be different had you been, or have you, if you've been in the group for like 7-8 years rather than the 2 years. How long are you in the senior group now? You were obviously in it initially, Eoghan, then you left and then you came back, and then Dara, you've been in since you were quite young, like 19, 20.
6 years now. Yeah, 6 years. Jeez, that's actually mad now that I actually think about it. It doesn't feel like 6 years, but I suppose, listen, I don't know if it would make a difference if it was 7. Maybe if it was, maybe 9-10 years in the panel, and you're just one of the leaders for maybe 4 or 5 years, it might be a bit different. But yeah, I still kind of feel a wee bit young, to be honest, when it comes to it. Probably because of COVID robbing us of a year or two of football. And
because you're a TikToker as well, so you get a load of stick over that, I'm sure, for being a TikTok.
People are sick listening to me at this stage. They don't want me coming in and talking anymore.
Well, the followers are still going up, so you obviously still have some value to offer, and people are still tuned into what you're saying. Eoghan, does it make it easier to speak with your athletes that are going through similar struggles in terms of their injury, given that you're going through the exact same thing? Or does it make her maybe even makes it a little bit harder? Or do you find that it allows you to kind of just decipher your own thoughts or differentiate what the positives are and what the negatives are because you're speaking to somebody in a similar position and not just yourself all the time?
Yeah, 100%. Definitely feel like you can relate a lot more with them when they get the initial blow and pick up an injury along the way, which is inevitably going to happen. You know exactly how to feel in that moment. And the big thing is you can focus so much on what you can do rather than you can't do. I think there's a big culture in the GAA. I'd say it's almost like 50-50 where people will focus on what they can, like they'll get straight into the rehab, focus on what they can do and be very positive on it. But I do think there's still a lot of players who get injured and sure, I'll just wait a couple of weeks, let it pass over and then I'll come back in. Whereas you're thinking, right, you need to maximize this time. Like, yes, 1, work on your rehab, then 2, like pick something else to go and work towards. Whether it's off-feet conditioning, whether it's going, like adding a couple of extra upper body sessions in, like trying to flip it and trying to, I spoke about perspective earlier, trying to flip the perspective of it. I definitely think that's one thing I try to communicate with the athletes, with the players that I'm working with. And yeah, it's good to get that sort of, like, for them to know as well. I'm sure that they feel kind of safe that, right, he can relate, he's been in this position, he can offer value, and they'll ask questions as well. But then also you can, when it comes to the sort of the mindset side of things as well, and it's maybe going on a wee bit longer, they have a bit of a setback, again, you can relate, that just makes them feel more comfortable. But yeah, definitely feel like you're more in touch with them now.
Going by your post last week, you've been getting in more than a couple extra upper body sessions a week, trying to put on the size and fill out the jersey. But it is kind of bringing you back to what you said, like there's always something that you can do. And it's probably something that both of you have realised from working with great practitioners in Alan and with Alice as well, is there's always something that you can improve, and rest is not going to solve your injury problems. Even though, as you said there, Eoghan, lots of athletes think that, I'll just rest it for a couple of weeks and then I'll be right as rain, ready to go back. Is that something that you made a mistake with in the past, Dara, or have you been pretty lucky in regards to having the experience and the knowledge around injury and rehab that potentially maybe you went the other side of the spectrum and did a little bit too much too soon, and now you have Alan to rein you back in?
Yeah, like 100%. I did both. So I obviously played, I've spoken with this before, but I played through the season with the injury. So I don't really look at that part of the year as any mistake in terms of what I did with rehab. That was purely like just trying to get myself right to play in the pitch every single week, get pain down and play. When I finished with the county then, in my head I had felt like, right, I've tried everything, which I hadn't. And I was like, well, the only other option here is I need to rest and I need to do something. So that's when I went travelling, and I was like, right, just give the body some time. Like, logically I was thinking the tissue needs time to heal without aggravating it, like, which is a logical enough way of thinking about things. But the body still needs movement, especially when a tissue needs heal, it needs blood flow around that area. You need to be doing something. You need to be walking, you need to be doing mobility, you need to be doing small bits of rehab that doesn't aggravate it. But I obviously went away and was probably away for 5-6 weeks, consuming alcohol and falling off motorbikes, and I came back in one of the worst, like, honestly, I can't even describe how bad of a condition I was in terms of the pain I was feeling compared to before I left. Like, before I left, I was not far away from returning in my head and how I felt. So that was a massive learning curve in terms of the body. It needs some form of stimulus, and it needs good nutrition, and it needs less alcohol in the system too. It definitely has a massive impact. But and then the other side of it was, again, before I actually went away travelling, I had went through a bit with the county, and I had took time off, and I had said, right, I'll take 3-4 weeks, but I ended up doing too much, and that went the other way then in terms of just aggravated things. But again, different injuries need different, obviously, outlooks, I suppose, as you know. When it comes to a tendon, that's going to need something completely different to a muscle injury, completely different to a bone injury. So I suppose, yeah, but I suppose as a whole, movement is definitely going to be required for nearly all injuries, and movement that doesn't cause pain, especially. Just enough, I suppose, to keep blood flow through the body and keep some form of stimulus.
Eoghan, we've obviously chatted about how you've pushed it quite hard in terms of strength and load, and as well as that on the pitch in terms of your acceleration and the approach that you use to trying to develop your speed. Is that something that maybe you were pushing a little bit too hard when you had the misdiagnosis of the injury? And in a way, has the actual diagnosis of the injury, even though it's probably a little bit more severe, been a good thing in terms of now you're doing the right things that you need to do to try and get yourself back?
Yeah, 100%. But for both questions, so I was just thinking about it, and Dad was chatting about pushing on and going through things. Like, I remember last year, when it first came up, it was just a pure load, just too much load, too much running, too much speed. And then I remember I got it right that I was feeling good, played the Armagh game, the championship, in the last sort of 10 minutes I felt it there, and then I was back out a week later playing another game, and then went back into club games, and it was just too much too soon in the space of 2 weeks. I think you're playing maybe 2, 3, 4 games, like, and it was just with that sort of pain there. And then I came back in for an in-house game, and I could barely even walk on. I couldn't even do like a single leg bridge. And then you're wondering, right, what's the crack? And then you get through the season, you take the couple of months there, so literally took from when we finished, say, as soon as club championship was done, so August, September, October, even November, December, right, get this right. Get back for a week for training, and then a week later again, it was flared up. I was like, right. So then finally, once I did get the diagnosis, I was like, this makes sense, because at that stage I was just going through the same cycle, and I was just getting the same results. So once I actually got the scan, I was almost relieved. I remember going into the scan thinking, I actually hope there's a tear here, because it would just at least give me clarity in terms of what's right or what's wrong with it, sorry, and what I actually have to go and do. So definitely getting that clarity has been good, and just to get a definitive answer and then actually get a process in place. Although it's pushed the process back, but at least it's getting sorted now rather than dragging on throughout another full season. Like, so, yeah, definitely glad to have the clarity on it.
And now you can move forward and move towards focusing on the league, obviously, which we are going to speak about now. So 2 good results, I suppose, for both Antrim and Fermanagh. We'll start with you, Dara. What's the feeling like in the group with some pundits writing you off and saying that you're not up to the level of the league that you're in, and then you go away from home and put in a performance, get, I wouldn't say a huge result, but it's definitely a positive result away from home. So what's the vibe like in the crew?
Yeah, so to be honest, we're well used to it, and we get it every single year. Like, I'm convinced if we went and won Ulster this year, we'd probably still be least favourites to win it next year, and that's just the way we've always been viewed. And you know, obviously this year there's been maybe a wee bit more logic thrown into it in the fact that we've lost quite a few players. Probably 6 starters, maybe from, if you compared the first game of the league last year, championship, to this year. But to be honest, it's brilliant to have that, and we always just use it as fuel. It honestly does. Like, as a player, that was nearly what was getting me most last week, was just hearing all this bullshit and seeing it all, and seeing the odds to the games, and just thinking, fuck, I would love to be playing, like, and just, yeah, I find it within opposition teams as well in terms of players. Like, you get so much more satisfaction when you actually go out and put in a performance and beat them. Or at the weekend, we should have beat them, to be honest, but just it fuels the fire, to be honest, within the camp, and it always has done. So I suppose the only way you can view it is as a positive in that way. And yeah, I think that'll always be there.
And as well as that, when we spoke last year, I remember distinctly you saying that you were in a bit of a transition, in that you had a lot of older lads and then a lot of younger lads. So even though you've lost, say, 6 starters off the panel, you probably have lads coming through that are willing to step up, and that's probably what we saw at the weekend. So is there a different mentality within the camp now, having those 6 lads moved on? Is there probably more of a burden? Maybe burden's the wrong word, but placed on your shoulders? You're carrying a heavier load, let's say?
I'm not sure. Do you mean like as a team we're carrying a heavier load?
As in, some of the lads are having to step up and take a little bit more responsibility, given that those 6 kind of leaders, as you said, or senior players, have moved on.
Yeah, well, I suppose a lot of the players who now are stepping up have already been stepping up for the last 3-4 years. People just haven't really heard much about them. We have a lot of quality. Like, we honestly do have a lot of quality there. Like that Hogan Cup team that obviously has come through. There's a few playing now, like really good players, and would compete with anyone. We have players there who've been, playing for 7-8 years that are still performing, and then obviously we have a few new faces who, again, people haven't really heard much about them. But in terms of like the quality within the squad, there's still a lot of quality, and the players who I suppose I mentioned have already been stepping up over the last few years have probably just continued doing what they're doing. Like, we did lose experience, but I don't know how much. I don't really rate experience that highly, to be honest, anymore. If I'm being totally honest, as in, like, physically, the players are in a really good place, which counts for a lot. And then nearly everyone who's playing at the minute already has played before. So, like, it's not as if we're throwing in debuts into the squad. Like, I don't even think anyone made a debut at the weekend. So there's players there who've played before, and are comfortable in that environment, and comfortable, I suppose, physically, that they're able to compete. So yeah, we still have a good squad there, like, and I suppose the age profile of the squad is young enough now, but again, not crazy young either, like, so we're in a good enough place.
That famous Manchester United team of David Beckham, the Neville brothers and all, they said, I think, in their first season, you don't win anything with kids, and then they went and won the Premier League. So, like, there's a lot of confidence there coming out of your mouth, I suppose, and there's probably a lot of confidence in the camp. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a young team. But in terms of confidence then, and having those goals, Eoghan, what are the goals for the team this year? Like, are ye eyeing maybe promotion up to be up there with Dara, even though Dara does usually be slagging you that you're going down into Division 4? And is it a realistic target for you following a big win away from home this past week?
Yeah, I think we'll be on the way up, and Fermanagh just we'll pass each other on the way up. Like, going by how the Telstra Cup game went last year, like, fuck, we should have.
You'll be going to Australia anyway.
But after the end of the season, go for Christmas. Be back for Mechanic Cup 2025.
Nah, we don't play Mechanic Cup.
That must be you, elder statesman. Now you don't have to tug out until it comes.
Or leave.
But yeah, definitely goals. Like the goals at the start of last year were to get promotion, and it was definitely in our hands. Like, and there was a couple of games there. Fermanagh obviously pipped us last night. There was a couple of results like that. The down game, Offaly game, didn't really perform, and we lost by a couple of points. So it was definitely in our hands, and we definitely have the potential there to do it. And I do think the team has sort of gone up a level. I think even the experience of getting that run in the Tailteann Cup, getting more games together, and then the workload that the boys went through over the winter has definitely been encouraging. So again, sights will be set high. Like we'll definitely be aiming for promotion. Like there's no doubt about that. And yeah, like you look within that squad, it's from even a lot of the older fellas in the team, from chatting to them, and they've been about for 10, 12 years, like, and they're saying it's one of the tightest teams that they've been involved in. So there's a good sort of vibe about the team as well. Good atmosphere, players all get on with each other, and it's a good environment to be a part of. Like it's real enjoyable, real good crack, like too. So I think that counts for a lot as well. I know it's not the be all end all, but you can be a great team and not play well or not perform. But I do think there's definitely a bit of a balance between the two, and I definitely think getting those performances helps the connection as well. And I think when you are that wee bit tight knit, it definitely drives performance sometimes too. Like so, no, it's encouraging and exciting, and definitely exciting for the year ahead.
Being tight knit as a group is incredibly important. Like, and you need to have that togetherness and that buy-in from everybody into the process. I just wanted to ask, what is the process like for the league, in that it is common practice from a lot of teams to trial different players maybe in different positions, or different players that are on the peripheries of the squad in the league. If you get dropped for a league game, do you still take it as hard as you would if you got dropped from a championship game? Or is it kind of accepted that there will be lads coming in and out of the squad? We'll start with Eoghan on this one.
I think from our position, the league's always massive for us, because in the past you would have said, right, not really competitive, not going to compete in Ulster, like realistically in the last like number of years. Definitely think we're making strides, but in order to long term be competitive in Ulster, be competitive in championships, you need to be playing at a higher level of football week in, week out. So I think the priority has to be getting up from, it was obviously we're yo-yoing between sort of Division 3, Division 4 there for a couple of years. So it's getting to Division 2, sustaining that Division 2, and then eventually pushing on from there. Like we see ourselves as definitely a Division 2 team, or the potential to be a Division 2 team at least. So that's what we're obviously working towards. And then with that, the league is obviously very important. Like I think for us, it's the biggest competition. So personally speaking, if I was dropped for a league game, I'd be fuming. I wouldn't want to be dropped for it. I want to play every league game that I can, and just show, like going by some of those games last year, like you saw the Cavan game that we had, and that was one of the ones like we had to win that to stay up, I think, and just that almost felt like a championship match. So I think getting promotion for the county would be massive, and like as a group, league is your main target first and foremost. Obviously, you want to give a run championship, and you're looking at the championship too, and looking at some of the performances we've put in. We've gone, right, okay, there's potential there, but we're definitely not looking past the league. I think long term development, you want to be moving up the divisions, playing at a higher division as possible, and that's where a lot of development will come from. So league for us is massive, and I don't think anyone would be too happy if they're dropped for a league game or not getting games in the league. Like.
Similar from yourself, Dara, or would you have any caveats that you'd put to that?
No, it's very, very similar, to be honest. Like there'd be very little experimentation going on within a league. To be honest, I don't think there'd be much experimentation going on with any teams apart from the top 3 or 4. To be honest, like a lot of teams are nearly everyone Division 2, 3, 4 want to go up, and the bottom couple in Division 1 just obviously want to make sure that they're not going down. So as a player, you wouldn't be taking it as rotation. Like if that was what you were told, you'd be calling it bullshit, and you'd be absolutely fuming, as Eoghan says. So you want to play, like as a player, you don't do dogging sessions for November, December, and the start of January to, be experimented with come the main part of the season, which is the league for 80% of teams. Yes, the championship is still a massive thing, and especially now with the Halton Cup in, but the league is massive. The league is massive, and most teams are preparing for a big league. Apart from maybe the top 5 or 6 who are probably sole focus is an All Ireland.
Is it hard to sustain that though nowadays with like league rolling into championship and then maybe Tailteann Cup as well? Like, it's a long season with lots of matches, and if there is no squad rotation, lads are going to be pushed pretty hard pretty early, I'd say, especially if you're treating every league game like a championship game. We'll go with Owen first.
Yeah, I think inevitably you're going to pick up injuries along the way. I think that's where the whole backroom team and setup comes in, where you're looking at, right, what's the load, knowing certain players, knowing what they're like, knowing what stage they're at, if they're coming back from injuries, how much work they've gone through, what position they're playing, and I think so much that comes into it, and that's where teams and setups are really tested. I think with the league, and as I say, inevitably we're going to have injuries, so you do need boys to step up, and there's been times where you look at a team or you look at the first game of a league, or the team of the first game of a league, and you look at the last game of the league, it could be night and day difference. But then all people need is that one opportunity to come in and set the tone and take a spot, and then push on from it. I can remember even seeing some people sort of coming in, you're kind of going, oh, what's going on here? You'd never have that, and then it's a masterstroke, and they perform, and then they hold their spot for the rest of the league, and they're a real addition to the team. So, I think it can be. It's a challenge, yes, but it gives boys an opportunity, and then if you're in the right position, if you take that opportunity, it can work really well for individuals. But that's the beauty of having a squad as well, where players can step up and players can fill in, and I suppose the importance of having a squad as well. If you start running thin coming towards the last couple of games and players aren't available or people aren't stepping up, then yeah, you'll find yourself in trouble. But I think it's exciting, and it's definitely part of it.
Is it hard with the squad rotation, Dara? Especially given that everybody wants to have their reserves being just as good as the starters, but maybe in the perceived smaller counties, it doesn't happen all the time.
I don't think, you've got how many? 8 league games? Or 7, is it? And you've got how many championship games? It depends on how many you have. So I don't think the load is massive. To be honest, you've 2 breaks in the league. The worst thing I found when there was a 3 or 4 week gap between league and championship was you were going and you're getting absolutely dogged for 3 weeks, and that was nearly worse than just rolling into games. And people have probably heard many players speak about this before, but you want games, and I don't think it's too much, to be honest. And I think it just can be unlucky at times when certain squads do pick up 2 or 3, and obviously when you're in maybe Division 2, 3, 4 teams, the ability to rotate between 25, 26 players isn't a luxury. It can be a bit more difficult, but players shouldn't really be picking up too many injuries throughout the league. A lot of injuries you'll see will be unlucky, as I mentioned, like a contact injury or something. But if you've built up a massive load in the off season, you've put in the work, your body's moving well, then it shouldn't be much of an issue, to be honest. And I actually enjoy when there's a smaller gap between league and championship. Obviously, you don't want to be rolling straight in maybe a week or two, but 2-3 weeks between is good, and it's a lot more enjoyable, I find.
So it's not the cumulative load of the games, but it's the combined load of both the games and the training, as well as we all know, and as we're touching on, your recovery. So it's probably not going to be too much for somebody that has all of those things in check, and has a job where they can maybe have the most optimal recovery possible. But it's probably one of the major reasons that we don't see as many tradesmen playing in the inter-county game as we used to, because it just doesn't constitute with high quality recovery. Obviously, getting up to go to a site at 5, 6 a.m. in the morning and then train until, I don't know, 9, half 9, 10 o'clock at night. It's probably harder for them to break through, even though there are a few. And I'm sure you two get a lot of stick about being online coaches, as Dara, you've said, working in cafes for a career. which is obviously just jealousy, but it is a hard task if you have all of these stressors on you to make it and continue to have the outputs to tolerate the inter-county game. Do you think it's going to move to a stage where inter-county teams are going to get younger and younger? Or do you think because of advancements in strength and conditioning and sports science, we're going to see the top players hanging on for longer and longer?
I think we're already seeing it. I think we're already seeing players hanging on for longer and longer. I was just watching Aidan O'Shea move around the pitch at the weekend. He's moving the same as he was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But the recovery process is huge. And obviously there's players who are just, a bit more challenged in terms of their job is quite stressful. And it does obviously become a lot more difficult if you're getting 5 or 6 hours of sleep every night, between games, like for a full week between games. Your recovery just simply isn't going to be the same. But I think it comes down to, I suppose, managers and coaches managing load and trainings throughout the week. I think if you prioritise freshness every single week for the throughout a league campaign, then there's no reason the body wouldn't be fully recovered for those games. And there's an abundance of information and knowledge and methods out there now that are there to improve that side of things and improve recovery. That I think it's made a lot easier for people now than it may have been 6 or 7 years ago. And obviously you've got a lot more data where coaches are now able to pull back load and pull players out of sessions. So that's probably why we're seeing players holding on for longer. There's a bit more logic in terms of, this guy might be 34, he's been playing for 14 years. He doesn't need to cover 7-8k tonight. So if we have a game on Sunday and he played at the weekend. So yeah, there's a lot more of that going on. I think we'll definitely see players continuing on into the late 30s, to be honest, playing county level football.
Yeah,
I'm going to throw you under the bus here, Eoghan. And obviously we're talking about recovery and optimal recovery and processes and all. What was your perspective on the Glen boys being thrown in at the weekend? Because as Dara just said, they're probably thinking, I just want to play games, and I want to put my best foot forward for a new manager.
Yeah, I get that. But if it was me, I would be seen for a week at least, like after winning the Club All Ireland. Pulling me off the high stool at fucking 10 o'clock on Saturday morning to go down to the game. But no, fair play to them, class. But I think it was mad. I think it was madness. If there is truth in that they wanted to play and they were all buzzing, obviously they're going to say that for cameras or whatever. Fair play to them if that's truth. Like, respect it, class. But I don't know. Just my instinct tells me, like obviously they all had a good performance. There did look like times where they started getting fatigued, second half, few mistakes, black card and whatnot. Was it the smartest idea to maybe play them? I don't think so. I don't know. I'm not Mickey Hart, but from my own perspective, like I think it's a bit mad. But at the same time, if they did decide that they wanted to play and they put their hands up to go and play, I think fair play, respect to them. But no, something tells me I think they're maybe forced a wee bit into it there. That's my initial thought.
I think. Well, I heard Conor Glass talking about it today on a podcast, and he just mentioned that he was always planning to go down to Kerry. I think the fact that the game was in Kerry against Kerry, you obviously would be absolutely buzzing to go and play something like that. And I think he said he drank till Wednesday, so we'll let him off the hook on that. But yeah, going down and I suppose having 2 nights away in Kerry with the team, with the opportunity to play under lights in Killarney, would you look back in 40 years and regret not going down there? I think you probably would. Every opportunity, like I know personally, I don't know, to be honest, in terms of what I would actually do. But they made a decision in terms of how their bodies actually felt come Thursday, Friday. But I'd definitely be enjoying 3-4 days anyway on the rip. And then if the body felt good, you'd probably be excited to go down and play a game like that and see how you get on. So I'd cut them a bit of slack in that regard. The fact, I don't know if there was a game in Derry against anyone else, would they have played? I don't know. I think it's just that. that the fact that it's Killarney under lights, I think, might have influenced that a wee bit.
As well as that, like, they're probably thinking that we've won a lot over the last few years. So even though they've won in All Ireland, they've still won Ulsters and all the rest of it. So they're no strangers to the high stool, I'm sure, to celebrate those wins. So obviously, if, as you said, Owen, if you were to win in All Ireland, it might be a crazy run where you've gone the whole way through Ulster and up to the All Ireland, and maybe has come unexpected, even though no club is going to say it's unexpected. So maybe that's why you'd be on the high stool for a fortnight after it. Whereas the Glen boys aren't strangers to success at all. As well as that, they're at that higher level where they probably have the mentality that they want to go winning all the time and competing, so they actually enjoy it. But I know myself, like, if I was part of that performance staff, if I had any hair, I'd be pulling it out, because I'd be so worried that one of them was going to pick up an injury so early. And maybe that's a conservative approach, but it's just an approach that probably is focused more towards the championship than it is towards the league. And like, from the outside looking in, we don't know what their priority is. Usually they do go pretty hard in the league anyway. So it'll be seen in the future, I'm sure, where they're going to go and what they're going to have in their sights for the rest of the year. But we said last week, or a couple of weeks ago in our episode, that we'd move on to some of the questions that our listeners have been throwing in. So I said we'll try out a few of these, the best ones. The first one's an interesting one. It is, who, in your opinion, is the most underrated footballer in the country? We'll start with Dara.
That's a very tough question. And I probably need to have a wee think about that. Underrated.
If Owen has someone, we'll go to Owen.
As well, I'm trying to think.
What is it? Phone a friend.
We'll do. I was listening to a podcast today, actually, Chris William and Alex Hormozy, and a lot of it was like, I nearly thought the podcast was off. There was that much silence between them speaking. So we'll go with that for this one. We'll just sit in silence for 5 minutes.
Unfortunately, I've caused Dara, so we can't sit in silence for too long.
That's one thing I've actually been thinking about. Every time it came on, I was checking. I had it in the car earlier. I was seeing Danny hit play again, and I've been thinking about it myself, trying not to and I've been listening back to the last episode, and the amount of times I said that, I was cringing at myself. So I'm trying to pause a wee bit more. Underrated player.
I think online it probably happens too.
Do you want to name a county, and it might make it easier?
No.
An underrated player within.
pick a province. We'll go province first. So we'll go with most underrated footballer in Ulster.
In Ulster, okay.
Doesn't make it any easier.
You should have sent me these questions. You don't want to give anyone a one up in Ulster, like.
True. Well, I would say, from my own perspective, and it's a bit of a rogue opinion, because people will say, oh, he's rated quite highly. I just don't think he's rated as highly as he should be. I'd say Shane McGuigan, to be honest. Because, like, I don't think people appreciate just how good he is. Like, they wouldn't hold him in the same conversation as Clifford and Walsh. And I think from watching him over the last year, he absolutely belongs in that conversation. And maybe as a back, you can probably offer some value and insight into how good he is just from watching him or from playing against him on.
Yeah, definitely. I've never actually played against him, but I can imagine him being a handful. He looks tricky to mark. Kicking ways, unreal. Just seems to find space and get shots away, and he's not going to miss from free. He'll get into contact nicely, and then anywhere within the 45, like he's putting it over, like. So he's dangerous. Like, he's strong fella, big fella. I think you saw he come out and caught that one in midfield there at the weekend too. He's quality. Like, I would agree with you.
I definitely would agree with that. I've heard quite. I remember. I think it might have been Paddy Andrews who spoke about him on a podcast last year, and he claimed that Paddy Small was better, and like, Shane McGuigan's in the top 3 forwards in Ireland. Pure quality on the field, and he'll probably start getting a bit more credit now as Derry compete for probably the All Ireland the next year or two. But definitely, I think that's actually quite a good shout. Obviously he's rated highly, but not as highly as he probably should be, to be honest. So yeah, that's probably the one and also.
Will we go province by province then? Does that make the most sense? And if so, then will we go with Connacht next?
Yeah. So let me have a think about this one.
I was waiting for it.
Yeah, you can go first.
I think.
Are you talking to me or Owen?
Owen, are you? Do you have an idea in Connacht?
I'll be fairly Mayo biased, I'd say.
I was going to say
affiliation with Ballintubber.
I think in the Mayo team especially, there's a load of new potential coming through. I know in the past you would have been very focused, like Cillian O'Connor, Jamie O'Connor, Aidan O'Shea. Obviously, I think there's a lot of serious players coming through and serious athletes as well. I think. Obviously, he was out with the injury there. He had the cruise ship there last year, and he's back in again. He'll be flying this year. But one, I think it was Jordan Flynn last year really stepped up. I think he was kicking. Was it one of the Champions games? He kicked 3-4 points maybe from wing forward. So yeah, I think serious potential there. Like, and he's shown glimpses of it, and I think the next couple of years he'll step up as one of probably the leaders for Mayo. Like. So yeah, I think when you have players like Cillian O'Connor about there, it can be easy to kind of go under the radar. But when you watch the games and you see what's going on, he shows some serious potential. Like.
I actually was going to say Jordan Flynn as well, just when I was thinking of Mayo, when you had mentioned Mayo, pure quality and always plays too. Like he's nearly consistent within the team throughout early stages of the league, throughout the main part of the league, and has been for the last couple of years, and probably doesn't get the credit he deserves. And as you say, always good for a couple of scores.
Yeah, I was on about Conroy there when I was chatting about the injury for his knee, and completely went out of my head. Class as well. It sounded like I was saying Jordan Flynn had an injury, but no, it wasn't him. But no, Jordan Flynn, yeah.
But that forward line in Mayo, like, it just strikes fear into any opposition, really. Like, there's not one weak link in it. So, is it a possibility for them this year? Is it the same as usual? Like, and what is missing, do you reckon? If he came up against them as an opposition, what would you be saying are their weaknesses? We'll go to Owen first, because obviously we're talking about the forwards being so strong and he's back man.
I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe a consistency thing. I think they can hit some serious highs, but then maybe struggle to back it up the following week or whenever it really matters. Like, they'll go serious in the league, but then whenever it comes to championship, they maybe drop off a wee bit. But I think for me, from the outside looking in, obviously, like I don't know any of them. I wouldn't speak to any of them, but it seems like a consistency side of things where you can see. I think you just sort of have maybe it is the past, and maybe subconsciously, because there's so much talk about what's happened in the past and nearly stories. I think subconsciously maybe that might seep in a wee bit. Like I'm thinking about even Tyrone after the year they won the All Ireland. There's so much talk about we can't mess this up. We don't want this to happen. We don't want to have a hangover year sort of thing. And then because there was so much focus on that not happening, it ended up happening anyway, because I think it took so much energy out of them. So I think it could be something like that, something subconscious. But I think it is a consistency thing. It's obviously hitting those heights, which they can undoubtedly hit. Like they're one of the best teams in the country for the last 10, 15 years. But I think it is a consistency thing of when it matters, consistently performing at that high level week in, week out, and getting those results that when things start getting tight, that they come out the right side of them.
I don't know if they have a prolific enough score getter, as in like as Shane McGuigan as we were speaking about, someone with pace, power, size, and the ability to kick 7 points a game consistently. Obviously Cillian O'Connor did it for a long time, but he's kind of past that stage now. Ryan O'Donoghue is obviously...
Hey, don't speak too soon. He's getting faster.
I was waiting for
Ross,
that.
have you come too late then? We'll see.
I don't know. It's never too late, let's say.
We'll see. Ryan Runner obviously is probably their main free taker and score getter at the minute, but size isn't on his side, I suppose, when it comes to getting man marked and playing, in a tight big game. So yeah, I don't know. Does that mean you can't win All Ireland? No, but it can come back to bite you in certain games, I think.
100%. And I did like the look of that young Fergal Boland at the weekend. He scored a couple of quality scores, and he looked to move really, really well. So, maybe it is if somebody does step up, and it could be any one of them. What you've just touched on there, Dara, is they probably have the talent, but what we're wondering is, are any of them going to be on form for the whole season and be that score getter for them, and then potentially they'll have a better chance of getting over the line? I think, will we go through the rest of the provinces before we wrap up, or will we move on to a different question?
I think we'll go another question there.
Yeah, we'll go another question. We'll not waste
you're
another
stuck
10
on
minutes.
that one too much. How do I become more effective on the ball as an individual if I only get a number of possessions per game? We'll go with Dara first, being in the forwards. That's from J Hatzer 11.
Yeah, that's, I suppose, a tricky one, but it depends. As a forward, if I'm getting minimal possessions in a game, I'll come out and look for the ball a wee bit more in certain parts of the game to just feel my way into it, I suppose. And yeah, I suppose when it comes to big games and times like that, the work should nearly be done already within training sessions, within other games, so that you're able to make big plays, when you do get the ball. And again, it comes back to what you're doing on your own off the field, what you're doing before training, what you're doing during training, to, I suppose, push your level upwards in terms of your confidence on the ball and your ability to take men on. So yeah, I think it's just, again, it's reps. So if you're not getting enough reps in games, you're going to have to up your reps outside of games, and that's probably the only way you can really do it. And review footage out of games, see how you can actually get on the ball that bit more within games, and yeah, get out on your own, I suppose, and rep out the movements in games that are going to, I suppose, have the most impact for you, I suppose, the way you play the game.
Obviously, Eoghan, you like to go get a score. You'd like to think that you're a man that's going to go get a score. But how can backs do the exact same thing when maybe they're limited by being by themselves? Is it focusing on the same ball skills as the forwards, or is it working on movement skills, in spite of potentially the advantages of working on those ball skills like Dara's just touched on?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a blend of both. You want to obviously have the physical ability and work on things in a closed environment away from the teams, that you have, I suppose, more tools in the toolbox, so that whenever it comes to seeing something in a game and being in a certain scenario, you're not thinking about it just subconsciously. It just happens. It's just a natural reaction, in terms of maybe putting the brakes on, changing direction, or how you're sort of going to get from moving one way and transition into getting moving forward from a physical standpoint. But then from a skill standpoint, yeah, I definitely think working on the same skills, ball handling, soloing the ball, and obviously taking scores if the opportunity arises. How many times do you see defenders get up, find themselves in the opposition 45, and then they get on the ball and it's almost like freeze, or I'll ship it off, and they don't want to take the shot. So it's definitely what Dara says, is exposure to different scenarios. The more often you find yourself in those scenarios, the more confident and competent, I suppose, you become. And I suppose reflecting on it is a good bit as well. If you get into those sort of, even thinking myself last year, it's it was a couple of times I got up into the far 45 and I was kind of going, fuck, what am I doing here, sort of thing. In a club game, do you know what I mean? Exactly. So it's then being conscious on that, being deliberate with your practice then. So making a conscious effort, right? Okay, in training, I'm going to focus on getting forward, and when I get forward, this is what I'm going to work on. And then you start to notice patterns of play. You start to notice different setups, and then you have different tools in the toolbox to try and break that down or to solve that problem. Like so, I think it is working on it in a closed environment and then bringing it into the game. And I suppose the more exposures, the more reps you get in of it, the more comfortable you become.
So we're talking about defenders getting up the field and getting scores, and this is probably the most relevant question to ask next from Oisin Murray. What's the biggest issue with how modern football is played, and how would you address it? Dara?
Jesus, that's a deep question. I think modern football is starting to, I suppose, change slightly from what it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where it was really, I suppose, just all about breaking down defences and getting up and getting down. I feel like it's opening up a wee bit more. I know there's been different, I suppose, proposals for rule changes and stuff where you keep so many players in certain parts of the field, which I have thought about as well and could be a good idea, but I think it's going the right. I think it's starting to go the right way again. And we're starting to see better games of football, more free-flowing football. Teams are starting to realise, like, the amount of work that's been done on breaking down blanket defences over the last 5 years, and Owen's probably, experienced it too within trainings. Like, a lot of work would have been done on breaking those defences down now. So even I know myself, and within team settings, I'm very comfortable when a team does set up with 14, 15 behind the ball that I'm going to be able to break them down. So teams are starting to realise that and starting to probably keep more men up and maybe aren't as defensive. So we're seeing that at the higher levels now again, and I think football's getting a wee bit more enjoyable. So hopefully there'll be no need for any rule changes over the next few years.
Yeah, I think rule changes do my head and just leave it as it is, and it'll work itself out. It always goes in a sort of full cycle or evolves over time. But no, I definitely think with the game, the way it can be coached, I think the skills can kind of be coached out of players at times. Like that sort of instinct, they're just sort of playing off the cuff, can be coached out of players. But there's always still going to be room for it. You look at moments of brilliance in games, and it's often it's a basic skill executed really well. Yes, there's so much focus, and we probably contribute to that a wee bit because we're so focused on the physical side of things. But we'll be the first people to say that it's all about the skill at the end of the day, and the skill is the biggest part of it. But I still feel it's enjoyable because it's playing at a faster pace at a higher level. Yes, sometimes it's slow, breaking teams down. Did you see that there? No.
Paula's not slow at all. She's knocking the gaffer out.
She's bringing the hurl of it. So what was I saying? Yes, with the physical side of things, you're playing at a pace. Sometimes maybe it's slow, but I definitely feel it makes it a lot more exciting. Players moving at faster speed, covering more ground. But then you look at some of the skills, like the skills just I think it's nearly a treat now when you see something executed really well. You see a brilliant score, a brilliant pass. So yeah, I agree with that. It's going full cycle. I think just leave the game as it is, and it always sort of works itself out. But if there's still nothing better than just seeing a player just playing off pure instinct and just dominating the game skills ways. Like,
I think what you do, PD, in terms of breaking down the check and the different changes direction, the different agility, like as I mentioned, teams are starting to figure out now how to create goal scoring opportunities, how to create easy point scoring opportunities by thinking about the space in behind your man as well as the space in front. Like, there's a lot more going on now in terms of how to open up defences and how to create chances, I suppose. So yeah, that game speed, being able to change direction, be able to lose your man. There's a lot more of that going on. A lot more the physical qualities of the game, or the players within the game, is going up all the time. So that's probably creating those moments of brilliance at times. And we've seen it in the final with Glenn, and the goal with Bridget's when O'Carroll checked in behind his man and created the goal scoring opportunity. Like, those things are happening all the time now, and it's nearly impossible to mark.
Yeah, it's when you pair up the ability to move fast with the ability to think fast so that you can play fast. Whereas there are some lads that can think fast, but they can't move fast. So they're going to be less likely to play fast. And there may be the players that are maybe the older statesmen that were playing off instinct before. But if you can develop the physical qualities, as you've just both said, to a level where you're above the average, as well as being able to think faster than the opposition, then you're very, very hard athlete or forward to contain. And that's probably why we're talking earlier about Walsh, Clifford and McGuigan. And then even just watching the Dublin and Monaghan game at the weekend, I was watching it with a guy that doesn't watch football at all, and he was saying, Jesus Christ, this is end to end. This is entertaining. And I was like, I think it's moving that way. I think it's gone very focused with a big emphasis now on transition to attack, whereas we were not in the last few years, but maybe about 6-7 years ago, it was very defence oriented, and it was about trying to limit what the opposition were scoring to win the game, rather than now it's like, okay, let's try and do that, but also when we get the ball, let's try and break and put as many scores on the scoreboard as we possibly can. And you can see that happening, and you can see the game opening up. And when the game opens up and there's more kick passes inside with more space there, there's more room for more creativity and playing on instinct.
Yeah.
But your confidence comes from your experience. So if you never work on those movements in training, it's very unlikely that you're going to kick a ball to me on the inside and I'm going to be able to do a spin move and a check or whatever, or a backdoor cut, when I haven't tried to manipulate someone in training and learned how to do it before. So that's the value in doing it, and I think that's the way the game is going, and it's a positive way to go. The one thing that I will say that I absolutely hate, that I think needs to change, is they've tried to stop cynical play in the last few minutes of the game. They haven't been successful in doing so. I think they need to be a lot sterner on it, to be honest. I think lads need to be sent to the line a lot earlier, and I think it can't be just in the last few minutes of games. It has to be throughout the game so that people are less likely to do so, because it seems like the black card is only a second half rule at the moment.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone's playing with a cynical style, I reckon there should be no issue sending them to the line in the first 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
Would you agree as a backman on, or would you staunchly disagree, just in favour of staying on the field?
No, I do agree. Like it only seems to come in, no referees, like I can't remember the last time I seen a black card in the first half. Like very rarely you're going to get one. It's if you get a yellow, even you'll be doing well. Like, but I do think it needs to be. It does need to be implemented, but if it's implemented on me, it'd be fuming.
I think you just need to change that black card rule to any deliberate foul. Like, so many players are getting away with like deliberate fouls, but without pulling the man to the ground, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like it's nearly a challenge how you can pull someone back without pulling them to the ground, so you don't get a black card and you only get a yellow with a lot of players. And then I feel if it's a clear goal scoring opportunity that you stop, then why shouldn't it be a red like soccer?
Like, I do think I remember someone saying about the AFL rule, like the 50-meter penalty. Like, I think that would be massive, and I suppose they kind of did if it was a clear goal scoring. Like if it was in the 21, I think they were doing penalties there a couple of years ago, like or within the D. But yeah, there's definitely a few ways you can go about it and make it a bit harsher, a bit stricter. Like it's just mad. Like everything's just so open to interpretation too. Like which can be tricky, but. Aye, that's up to you, Peter. You can bring the changes.
The change of directions, maybe. I don't know about the changes to the rules. Last question before we move on, and it is about a kind of a rule change in the last few years. What are your opinions on penalties being used at the end of games to decide them? Do you mind as players, or do you think it's a good way to finish it on the day?
Yeah, I think finishing on the day. I think all games should finish on the day. Like, see replays, and I think every game should finish on the day. There's nothing worse as a spectator going to a match and it ended in a draw, and then it's just class game, exciting game, but you go home and you're almost going like, oh, for fuck's sake, I want to know who wins. But I think as a player too, like, no, I don't mind penalties. Like, I think if you get to that stage and you haven't won it, clearly you haven't scored more points than the other team, and you're still level after extra time, like, penalties, like, class. It's excitement, it's a buzz. Yeah, no, I don't mind it at all. Like, I think it's good. Like,
I agree. I think the reason, like, because there's penalties in soccer, people are like, nah, we're not doing the same as soccer. Fuck that.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, penalties are a part of Gaelic too. Like, you get a penalty within a game, so just because it's in soccer doesn't mean it's a part of Gaelic too. And again, it creates excitement. As a player, I absolutely hate when I draw a game and I have to go and wait a full week to play again. Finish it in the day, best team wins in penalties, and just get it over with. If it's good enough for one of the biggest sports in the world, it's good enough for Gaelic football, in my opinion. And definitely, like, see that crack of going into 45s. Half the boys can't even kick a 45 if they had 10 attempts. So you'd be there all day, and it'd be awful to watch. There'd be little, I just think penalties is brilliant.
Daisy colours.
Yeah. It's more exciting. It's way more exciting having the penalties than it would be for the 45s, and that's probably one of the only other options. So like the only alternative to both of those that I could probably think of is like that old MLS style penalty shootout where they used to have to take the ball from what would be probably 30 metres out and run the goalkeeper down for a one-on-one, but most lads are going to finish them. Now, that would be something else if we could see that trialled in even a Sigerson Cup or something. But I don't know if they're going to be likely to trial that, if they're unlikely to trial penalties even just because it's a soccer mentality.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see McGurn running down, bearing down on goal in the last minutes of a game to try and decide it with a one-on-one against the keeper.
That would be pretty cool, actually, when you think about it. Next score wins would be some crack.
Next score wins, golden point.
Goal, aye.
That'd be sick.
The crowd would be going mental.
That'd be insane.
Yeah. You couldn't do that in a GAA match. You give someone a heart attack.
That's it. We murder. Imagine Hawkeye.
Definitely be 15 behind the ball.
Yeah, and if there was a foul in a scoring and a scoring opportunity for a black or a red card, the referee would be getting chased out into the car park.
Right time.
Right, boys. Great conversation as always. Thanks for tuning in for this episode of the Backdoor Cut. Thanks to Eoghan, thanks to Dara for tuning in as well, and we'll catch you again in a couple of weeks.
Good luck.
Cheers, folks.